All right, Reagan, the New York Giants, 6.5 win total. Some key losses. Obviously, Saquon Barkley. Xavier McKinney played every snap last year. Adoree Jackson still unsigned. Tyrod Taylor. Now Aaron Rodgers back up. Some key ads. Brian Burns, John Runyon, Jermaine Ellamore, Devin Singletary, and I had to throw in Malik Neighbors here. Reagan, I know you're not high on my New York Giants this year. What record do you predict? And tell me why you think they're going to suck.
Yeah, man, I just have them at 5-12, and this might be more of a hater type thing or just the fact that I really don't believe in Daniel Jones. I just think he's cooked. I mean, I'm not rooting for injuries, but the guy's neck is just in shambles. He's just one weird tackle away or fall from his career being over. And I'm not rooting for injuries by any means, but I just think at this point, like whether or not we had that whole debate before about the GM and the coach and if they're around and stuff. I just think the way the team's constructed right now, like no matter how good you get that roster, like Daniel Jones is not a Super Bowl winning quarterback. So I think their best bet is trying to build on stuff. And obviously they're not going to tank, but I think for the team, they just need to go and get a different quarterback this year. And I think it's going to be a quarterback carousel where we see Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and maybe even some DeVito again. If there was a bet out there, Giants over under starting quarterbacks this year, I would take whatever the over is because I think there's going to be a lot of different guys playing a lot. I think, unfortunately, the offense is just going to be rotating a lot this year. I love Neighbors, love the pick. I mean, obviously, before I still think he finishes fifth and has nothing to do with the talent. It's more just so the uncertainty of the offense and the different holes. I think not having Saquon is really going to hurt Daniel Jones a lot as well because I don't think Devin Singletary is going to be able to take the pressure off. Teams are going to be able to stack the box pretty easy. It's not like Devin Singletary is a Saquon Barkley where it's like, oh, one big play and he's gone. And think about it. Saquon Barkley had plenty of games where he was just getting stop. And then all of a sudden he broke off a 50-yard run. And I have no confidence that Devin Singletary is going to be able to do that.
Pause. Barkley lost that ability after his knee. The splits of his explosive run rate before that injury and after, like last year, just wasn't there. Like he gets caught
I agree,
now.
but
like it wasn't there anymore. But he was still the biggest, the big play, the only explosive threat really on the offense, which I agree with you.
He had a couple. He did get caught, but he still would break off like a 30, 40-yard run. That would still happen. He would get caught, but it was
dropped.
His splits were terrible. I'm not saying he was super efficient, but it's still the name alone would put teams on notice. Like you're not coming into that. Defenses aren't coming in and being like, "Yo, we got to watch the new 2-6." Like the old 2-6, I get it, but the new 2-6, he ain't like that. So I'm excited for Neighbors. I mean, it sounds like he is officially retired, right?
Yeah, that was like a month ago.
So Waller's gone. That didn't work out. I knew that wouldn't work out, but you know what? You guys didn't give up much for him. Defensive side, I mean, you guys do have a good defense. Obviously, Dexter Lawrence, you could make a debate that he's the number one guy. I think there's a couple guys there in that top tier, and he's 100% one of them. Brian Burns, I mean, I think a lot of Giants fans are very bullish on him, and I don't blame you. I mean, we've seen what he can do. It'll be interesting to see if he's still that elite edge rusher he once was. I mean, he's not the top 2 tiers, but he's definitely, we've seen him be in that tier 3. So if he can get back to that form, if not even better, that would make me excited for that pair, plus Thibodeau. So the D-line, very good. I think they get a little bit of disrespect from outside of the Giants world. And then the secondary, it'll be interesting. I mean, obviously losing McKinney, like you highlighted before, that is a major loss. But for the money he got, I think it was smart to not pay him. Because what did Green Bay end up giving him? Like
18 a year.
18 a year. So I think that was smart. He doesn't really fit your timeline right now. And that's a lot of money for a safety position that it's been proven it's not a premium. There's a reason why pretty much every year the past couple of years, there's not a safety drafted in the first round. And then a guy like Kyle Hamilton, who's a stud, falls. So I think that was a smart move to not pay him. But it's just hard for me to see this team succeeding. I really don't believe in the health of Daniel Jones and the talent of Daniel Jones at this part. I just think a couple years back, it was the perfect storm where a lot of things broke the way. A lot of close games were won, and I'm just not feeling it. And I admit it, maybe I'm a little low on them, but I got them at 5-12.
I got 7-10. I think given how bad the roster was last year, the amount of injuries, being on a third string quarterback, they had a tough schedule last year. The fact that they won 6 games, and not just won 6 games, but they competed and won 3 of those games in the back half of the season. No, I'm sorry. They won 5 of those 6 in the back half of the season. I think that is a really good thing that Giants fans should be proud of because that means the players didn't quit under Brian Daboll and they still believed in him. They still believed in their leader. So I think that's a positive. They do have a pretty difficult schedule this year. I mean, it's middle of the pack. I mean, the biggest thing that I agree with you with, Reagan, is not paying Barkley and not paying McKinney, because they weren't winning with those guys anyways the last 5 years. You're not going to pay a running back and a safety non-premium positions given the state of your roster when you were negative 51 in sack margin last year, which is the worst since 2000 by a long shot. They allowed 85 sacks, the second most in NFL history, and their offensive line ranked 31st in pressure rate allowed. So what'd they do? They brought in offensive linemen and they traded for Brian Burns. And although they didn't draft any offensive linemen, they did sign 2, which I liked. So you use those funds and you build the trenches, which when the Giants win Super Bowls, they're phenomenal in the trenches. So I like that part. But ultimately, I agree with you, Reagan. 7 wins feels right for me because I think they won 6 last year, and I think they're going to be a little better than they were last year. I'm assuming they're going to be more healthy than last year. They're one of the most injured teams in the league last year. And like I mentioned earlier, they're 3 plays away from winning 9 games, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, Jones, huge red flag. I agree with you, Reagan. I think if the Giants are out of the playoff race come December, he's going to get benched because he has that injury guarantee for 2025. And we just saw what happened with Russell Wilson last year where he got benched. Giants will do the same thing so they can move on from after the season if he doesn't have him in contention for a playoff spot and he's not performing like he did in 2022. My biggest fear is 2022 was their ceiling with Daniel Jones as the quarterback. It just, it just is what it is. He does not rank well in his passing metrics down the field. What made him so good in 2022 was his ability to scramble and his ability off of play action, which coming off a knee injury, now those 2 things are questionable. If he's just to sit there in the pocket without Barkley next to him, which his splits with and without Barkley, he was significantly better with Barkley on the field than without Barkley. If he's going to sit there in the pocket and just drop back the whole game, I'm skeptical. And I mean, this 2022 season, also, Dable was phenomenal in scheming it up for him. And I don't know, dude. I'm just skeptical that he can sit in the pocket and light up a defense. I think Malik Neighbors certainly helps. I think he's the best weapon he's had by far in his career to throw the ball to. But I don't know. Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, is going to have a big year in the slot. He came back from that knee injury and looked really good the second half of last season, and he was just breaking out his rookie season before that knee. I mean, Darius Slayton led the team in receiving again last year for the 4th time in 5 years, and he's never eclipsed 800 yards. So that's a problem. I'm hoping Neighbors changes that. I like Runyon at guard. I like Elmore at guard. And if what's nice about Elmore, he has guard tackle flexibility. So if Evan Neal doesn't figure it out, he's going to be out of town, and Elmore is going to play right tackle, and that's just, it is what it is, you know? Evan Neal is such an X factor for this team this year. I do like the defense a lot. Kayvon, 11.5 sacks last year. I'd like to see the pressure rate get up there more. And I think having Burns opposite of him is really going to help. He was 11th in ESPN's pass rush win rate last season, so that's really good to have opposite of Kayvon. Obviously, Dexter Lawrence, the top 3 interior defensive lineman. I say Chris Jones. You can go back and forth with him and Quinnen all day if you want. We can have the argument, but that's the top 3 in my opinion. His pressure rate was 15.3%, which is nuts for an interior defensive lineman. 3rd in ESPN's pass rush win rate. He's constantly double teamed. He lines up on the nose, and he has like over 80 pressures the last 2 seasons, and the next closest from a pure nose tackle is like 20. So he's one of the most dominant players in the league. I do think the offense will be good. I think the Giants will play a lot of 17-13 games, a lot of 20-14 games. I think they get 7. I think their ceiling is 10. I think their floor is 4. But I'm most excited for Malik Neighbors, man. He was an absolute stud at LSU. He caught 26 of 29 targets, 15-plus yards downfield. Huge. He was a beast after the catch, and that's while he had another first-round wide receiver opposite of him, and he was that dominant. So I think he's going to be a stud. The secondary, though, really concerns me. They're going to have to rely on 2 rookies, Tyler Nubin at safety from Minnesota. He had a lot of picks last year, but he mostly played deep safety, and Drew Phillips, 1 year of starting experience. All right at Kentucky. He's got, I mean, it wasn't great in the slot, which looks like they want him to play, but he's got some tools. The secondary, though, is really young. You got Cordell Flott, 3rd-year player at LSU, now moving outside after playing inside. Deontay Banks was good as a rookie, had a couple bumps, but for the most part, he was shadowing the number 1 and played really well. Different defensive scheme with Wink Martindale now out, Shane Bowen in. Going to be more of a 4-man rush and playing zone as opposed to blitzing a lot. I think that could help them, but yeah, I don't know, man. The offense really scares me. If they don't figure it out along the offensive line, it's going to be a long season.
Yeah, and I would say Neighbors, like, I think he could go for 1,000 easy. I mean, I just look at guys like Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. I mean, they both were able to do it. Similar draft capital. They both were able to do it their rookie years, getting over to that 1,000-yard mark. Actually, I don't know if Olave got there, but he was very close because I know he had a little bit of injuries
Yeah,
towards
with
the end.
poor
But
quarterback play too, especially for Garrett Wilson.
yeah, it was a quarterback carousel for both teams. I mean, Dalton, Winston, a little bit of Taysom Hill, and then Mike White, Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco. So I completely think Neighbors can get over it. I actually think, and I'm going to say it now, I think Locke is the best option going into this year for the Giants. I think he actually gives them the highest ceiling out of any of the quarterbacks on that roster, but only time will tell.
Yeah, Neighbors receiving line is 850, by the way.
I would take that over, yeah, but it's just tough again because of injuries. But I would take that over, and I'm assuming that's why Dave was about to pop in to say that that's his.
Can y'all see me right now, or am I just black?
It's just a black screen.
Black. I mean,
Damn. I don't know what's going on with my camera, but yeah, Drock's going to take over 850 receiving yards from my boy, Malik Neighbors. Slam it. He's putting $1,000 on it.
I already took the over as well. I already took it before Drock's lock.
So funny.
But I know if I'm in sync with Drock's locks, I'm feeling pretty good about my bet. Drock's lock is also waiting for Neighbors. He's also waiting for a Neighbors jersey in the mail. The dude just hasn't picked his number yet.
That's so funny. You need to clip this and post this on the Instagram. It's just going to be a black screen with the slam it in the background.
Slam it. Who's your MVP for the New York Giants, Reagan?
Oh man, it's tough. But I'll probably just go with Dexter Lawrence here. I mean, he's, no, he's actually, I wasn't. There's no debate. He's your best player by far. I mean, he's the anchor on that defense. I mean, if he goes down, that amazing D line is going to be terrible. He is going to open up so much for Thibodeau and Burns. Versus if one of those two is to miss time, it does not factor into him. So if he goes down, like both of those guys won't even hit double-digit sacks, in my opinion. He's going to open up so much for this team. So he's going to be by far the reason that defense is successful. So good against the run, so good at putting pressure on. Versus if he is to miss any time, I mean, that defense is going to be letting up 30 points a game easy.
Yeah, I have Dexter Lawrence as well. I mean, especially the run game too, because there's a hole next to Dexter at the other D tackle spot. Like someone's got to win it in camp. A lot of inexperienced players that got to prove it. And although Bobby Okereke is an absolute stud at linebacker, that I would say a top 10 linebacker in the league, and he was so good last year, played every snap. If you don't have Dexter Lawrence in front of him, it's going to be a lot more difficult for Bobby O to go to work. So I do have Dexter Lawrence. Just to give another name, Andrew Thomas. We saw what happened to that offense last year when he pulled his hamstring against Dallas in week 1. I don't think he came back to like week 7 or 8, and they were god-awful when he got – I mean, it was the worst offensive line in the league last year, even with Thomas on the field. That's how bad the rest of the group was. So if Andrew Thomas goes down again, this offense is not going to average more than 15 points a game. They need him to stay healthy to protect whoever's at quarterback. So just to put another name out there, I'll go Andrew Thomas, but I did have Dexter down. X Factor, Reagan, come on, it's Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I was going to, well, Daniel, you could say, honestly, I'm just going to say the quarterback room, actually, because I'm not sold on Daniel Jones being the start of the whole season. I just think there's too many variables. I would put the percentages at, I would love to put it at 0, but obviously you can't. So I'd say a 1% chance he plays all 17 games. There's just too many reasons for it. So I'm going to say the quarterback room is the X factor, because as long as one of these guys is able to sit behind there and get it to the playmakers and Neighbors and Wandell, and I mean, even Singletary in this case, and it'll be interesting. I know who's the rookie tight end you guys got. I forget his name, but I know he was an athletic freak and it was like testing off the charts.
Theo Johnson. Yeah. So his testing numbers were really good, but what kind of worries me a little bit about Theo Johnson, like he has all the tools to be a really good receiving threat, but he just wasn't at Penn State. And Penn State's known for having really good tight end play and guys that develop well in the NFL. So that kind of worries me. I guess that's why he fell to the 4th round, but he did test off the charts. Another guy they got, Tyrone Tracy, rookie on the offense. He didn't start playing running back till 2023. He was playing receiver, and he literally said, "I would not have gotten drafted if I stuck at receiver." But he was really good actually at Purdue. He was second in the Big Ten in yards more than expected per carry, and 4th in yards after contact, which for a guy that just moved to running back is pretty good. Although he is 25 years old, so I think they're going to use him as a hybrid player at running back and receiver. but I think it's an interesting addition. I just don't like the age that he's 25 years old. All right, who's your depoy, Reagan? Dexter Lawrence?
Yeah. I mean, well, I already got into it, but yeah, he's
Dexter Lawrence is the best player on this team for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can make a case for okay, similar to like when we were talking about the Steelers with Queen and Watt. I mean, some of these teams that have the elite guys at every level, you can make a case for, but I just think, yeah, I'm just gonna go. It's just Lawrence. It's hard to make.
Yeah,
the impact is just massive.
Maybe Brian Burns if he gets to like 15 sacks, but if he gets to 15 sacks, it's because Dexter's getting fucking double teamed on the interior, and Burns is just eating on the edge on one-on-one, and with Kayvon on the other side. And it's like, all right, the running back's going to help one way. Where is he going to help? You know what I mean? Then the other edge rusher might put up 15 sacks, but still, Dexter is the engine that drives this defense. Rookie of the year, come on, dude, it's Malik Neighbors. Although Tyler Nubin's going to start right away at safety, and some other guys are going to have to play early, given the holes in this roster, Malik Neighbors is going to be the catalyst for this offense.
I'm actually going to say Tracy. It's it's nothing to do with the talent of Neighbors. It's the fact that I do not believe in Devin Singletary, and I think he's going to win the job, and I think he's going to have close to 1,000 all-purpose yards. Where I think Neighbors, I'm just a little afraid about Neighbors. Like I think the talent will outweigh it, but the quarterback play really scares me for him. It's nothing to do with him at all. It's just the Giants, like until it's always been, we don't have the weapon, but now it's who the hell is throwing them the ball. So I think it's going to be tough. And I'm just really excited for Tracy. I think he could be a guy that ends up getting 200 touches this season and wins out on pure volume. So I think he could actually be a sneaky flex start in fantasy. He's a guy I've been targeting a lot in best ball late. In Dynasty, he's definitely a guy that if you can pick him off, if somebody doesn't draft him in the first 3, which I would think they would, but if they don't, pick him up, throw him on your taxi spot. He might not have an impact right away, but he's a guy that I'm definitely interested in later in the season, and I think could be a reason why you're potentially having success down the line. And I mean, think about it. Running backs get injured all the time, so you want to stack up on him. So he's a guy I would be definitely having on my bench spot in redraft leagues as well.
I like that sneaky play, Reagan. I like that a lot. The only thing I would say to rebuttal for your neighbor's point, though, sorry, don't mean to cut you off, but the only thing that doesn't worries me as much as you, granted, there's definitely a level of concern with the quarterback play, but I just believe in Brian Daboll as a play caller and a play designer, that he's going to get his shiny new toy the ball somehow, some way. And Neighbors shown that he could catch the ball all over the field and make things happen after the catch, where I think he's less reliant on quarterback play, more so than a pure boundary receiver, because he's going to go all over the field. And he's going to catch a lot of balls underneath, and he has that big play ability for a receiver to take one to the house. And he's the first Giants receiver that has had that ability since Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to make one rebuttal and just go off of some of the past couple wide receivers that have done it. Okay, so between Olave, Wilson, Chase, Jefferson, one thing they all have in common that Neighbors does not have, an elite running back who is very dynamic and can do it in the pass catching game and is a running back. I mean, Breece Hall was dominating till he went down. Alvin Kamara was still in his prime. Dalvin Cook was still in his prime, and Joe Mixon was still in his prime, where there's no Saquon anymore. And if Saquon was still there, I'd be feeling so much more confident, because those guys take so much pressure off of them. Where what do you think every single team coming in is going to be looking at? Neighbors, where there's no running back that it's like, all right, this guy too. So that's my biggest worry.
That's a good point. I tip the cap to that point.